times. Because all the morals and the doctrines, this is the only time that we really apply it. When we hurt. Job. Everybody go read the book of Job. Just read the book of Job. He took everything from Job. He kept snatching everything from Job. And Job, like every Christian that, everybody like, I put so much good into the world. Why so much bad coming to me? He like, you know what? I ain't really been bad to nobody. I just want to talk to him. I want to ask him why. Why he doing this to me? God looked at him and said, who you talking to? Why not you? This is the time for you to praise my name. This is the time for you to tell the other people through the midst of pain, I'm the one that's giving you the strength, fool.
In front of me.
But they're saying it's over an overdose.
That's some fake ass pills, bro. 9 times out of 10, it's probably them fake ass pills. Like, I don't knock nobody who do what they do, but it's too fucking dangerous to get anything off the streets.
But they're saying it's over an overdose.
That's some fake ass pills, bro. 9 times out of 10, it's probably them fake ass pills. Like, I don't knock nobody who do what they do, but it's too dangerous to get anything off the street. You gambling with your life when you swallow that pill that you got from your homeboy. Even if he said he got it from the doctor, like, don't believe that. If you didn't go to a doctor and get that as your medication, don't take it. Even if somebody's selling it to you, got the pill bottle. There could be an old pill bottle they had, and they putting new fake pills in it. Like, this a dangerous game if you out here taking drugs. You gotta really, like, pay attention.
The story begins in the quietest way possible, which is exactly what makes it unsettling. In the early hours of September 5th, 2024, Rich Homie Quan's life came to an end, but nothing about that morning followed the natural rhythm of an emergency. According to the official timeline, Quan's brother Andre was the first person to discover him. It was around 3 a.m. when Andre walked into the kitchen and saw Quan lying on the floor, unresponsive, with food still in his mouth. That detail alone immediately raised questions for anyone listening closely. Food still in his mouth suggested whatever happened came suddenly, without warning. But what followed next is where the story began to fracture. Instead of calling for help, instead of checking for signs of life, Andre later told authorities that he simply picked Quan up and moved him onto the couch. No urgency, no panic, no 911 call, just silence for hours. To many people, that behavior didn't align with shock or confusion. It felt like certainty, like someone who already knew how the story ended. And the longer that silence stretched, the heavier it became, because every minute that passed without medical help closed another door. That single decision would become the foundation for nearly every question that followed, setting the tone for a day that would never fully make sense. By the time the sun began to rise, the situation still hadn't changed. Around 6:45 a.m., Quan's child's mother, Amber, woke up. She reportedly went about her morning routine, taking the kids to school before returning home. Only then did she check on Quan, who was still lying on the couch where Andre had placed him hours earlier. According to her account, his body was cold, there was foam around his mouth, and he still wasn't breathing. That's when she finally called 911. But when that call was released, it didn't bring clarity. It brought discomfort. People listening expected hysteria, desperation, fear. Instead, they heard a voice that sounded calm, almost procedural. Listeners online described it as someone checking off a responsibility rather than watching a loved one fade away. The operator asked questions, and Amber answered them evenly, explaining that Quan had slept on the couch, that she put a blanket over him earlier, that she didn't feel a heartbeat. To many, it sounded like she already knew the outcome. That call became a turning point, not because of what was said, but because of how it was said. The lack of urgency didn't sit right with the public, and once that seed of doubt was planted, it only continued to grow. As attention returned to Andre, the questions only multiplied. He was the first person to see Quan unresponsive, yet he never called for help. He never explained why. He didn't publicly clarify whether he checked for a pulse or tried to revive his brother. He simply went quiet. And silence, in moments like this, speaks loudly, especially when followed by behavior that felt off to many watching from the outside. After Quan's passing, Andre's actions drew even more scrutiny. He was seen wearing Quan's clothes, posting online with laughing emojis, and moving as though he had stepped into a new role overnight. Rumors spread that he was floating obituary links for money and reaching out to major artists for opportunities just days after his brother's death. In communities that understand grief intimately, this didn't look like mourning. It looked like momentum. People began to ask whether Andre knew something long before anyone else did, whether that early morning discovery wasn't a shock at all, but confirmation. And once that question took hold, it refused to let go. As the internet dug deeper, whispers turned into rumors, and rumors turned into widespread speculation. People began claiming that Andre and Amber weren't just living under the same roof, but were allegedly involved behind Quan's back. No proof ever surfaced publicly, but the timing alone made the rumors explosive. Quan passes, and suddenly the dynamics inside that house are under a microscope. Then another name entered the conversation, Kia Brown. Reports suggested she was also present in the house around the time Quan died. Not family, not widely known, just someone whose presence was never fully explained. When authorities questioned her, she allegedly gave vague answers, claiming she stayed in a room and didn't know what happened before or after. To many, her energy felt nervous, unsettled. With too many people in the house, conflicting timelines, and unclear relationships, the story began to feel crowded. And crowded stories often hide the truth in plain sight. At first, the public was told Quan died from an overdose, a familiar explanation in hip-hop tragedies. The narrative included a mix of substances commonly mentioned in similar cases, and for some, that was enough. But for those who truly knew Quan, it didn't line up, especially his father. Months later, Quan's dad spoke out, and his words carried weight. He wasn't defensive, he wasn't angry. He was confused. He explained that his son never indulged in pills around him, that he was strict, disciplined, and present in Quan's life. They spoke daily. They weren't distant. This wasn't a father clinging to denial. This was a man questioning a story that didn't match the son he raised. He acknowledged Quan smoked and drank, but the idea of a lethal cocktail didn't align with what he knew. And when a father who lived in constant communication with his son says something doesn't feel right, people listen. Then came the toxicology report, and instead of closing the case, it added fuel to the fire. People noticed how quickly it was released. In cases involving public figures, these reports often take time, sometimes months, due to complexity and scrutiny. But Quan's results seemed to arrive with surprising speed. To the public, it felt rushed, clean, wrapped up, almost too convenient. Combined with the delayed emergency call, the unusual behavior inside the house, and the unanswered questions, the report didn't bring relief. It brought suspicion. People began asking whether the outcome was decided before the investigation ever began. And once that thought enters the conversation, it changes everything. Amid all the speculation, one voice stood apart. DC Young Fly, who had known Quan and his family long before fame, chose a different path. At the funeral, he didn't entertain rumors. He spoke about life, pain, faith, and endurance. He reminded the family that loss doesn't excuse abandoning purpose. That moment stood in stark contrast to everything else surrounding Quan's death. While others searched for answers, DC focused on healing. And that contrast made the unanswered questions feel even heavier. Because when you strip everything down, what remains is a puzzle. A morning filled with silence, a call that came too late, a story that never fully settled. And until someone explains what truly happened in that house, Rich Homie Quan's name will continue to echo, not just as a rapper lost too soon, but as a question that refuses to fade.